Hello and welcome back to the last programme of day 2 of Radio Days. It's the 555 Live with Harry. But before that, just remember, we are here for you during Radio Days, the 4 days from 3 in the afternoon until 7 o'clock. We have a backstage area with no cameras, text and chat. And in that space, we have had conversations with people who are away from family or estranged from family, people who have found the last few days lonely and upsetting. So instead of being lonely alone, why not be lonely together with us backstage here at Autistic Radio? But now, presenting the 555, over to Harry with Spectrum Voices. Hi Harry, are you there for me?
Good evening, Jules. Thank you very much. Hello everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 28th of December 2025. And this is where we share the posts shared on Autistic Radio Facebook page and the topics within them. And the first post is from Jordan James, the autistic photographer. Described as a public figure. Hi, I'm autistic, ADHD, dyslexic and generally neurodivergent photographer, parent, husband, advocate, ND specialist, author and host of the Neurodivergent Experience podcast. I'm also a motivational speaker, so please email me for inquiries. And what Jordan has shared is the following. The real me. When people tell me they like me, I automatically question why. I don't think, that's nice, someone likes me. I wonder what version of me they like. Because in my head there are so many versions I've presented to the world, I forget which one is the camouflage and which is the real me. Perhaps it's more that the camouflage I presented has now become part of me. So what is the act and what is the real me? Maybe there isn't a real me. Maybe whatever version I choose to share with someone is the real me. When I am that person, so I'm multiple people to multiple people. Maybe to one person I'm witty and charming. To another I'm cold and distant. To another I'm rude and overly opinionated. To another I'm intelligent and well-mannered. I think it's very human to have many faces, especially when navigating professional environments and people. I believe the difference for me as a neurodivergent person is that every day I'm attempting to be a version of me that will fit in, mostly due to a chronic fear of rejection and past ostracisation. It is like doing a show without ever having a break, unless I'm at home, by myself and lost in a video game story. But then again, even this is being someone else completely, so who knows if I'll ever know the real me. What I do know is I have lots of family and friends who love me, and whatever version of me they love. I need to accept that their love is unquestionable and I need to accept it. Perhaps being a late discovered neurodivergent adult just means never knowing who I would have been if I'd learnt to love myself earlier, and learning to love who I am now, whatever version of me that is. That is the only way I'll ever be truly happy. On this page, I've always tried to be as honest and real as possible. But even here, I've had to camouflage myself due to the toxic nature of social media. I'm as real as I can be without harming my mental health. What's people's thoughts?
Wow, Harry. I think it's this time of year, isn't it? Somebody's put it all together about how they're feeling at the moment. I just want to say the one thing, and it's about the toxic social media world. I don't take part in that except when you show me this safe page that you arrange for us here at Autistic Radio. My communication with other people doesn't have trolls in it. It has people who I meet up with, you, my colleagues here, and other people that pop in, and that feels like a safe alternative space away from social media to be myself, unmasked pretty much. Different versions of myself maybe, but comfortable with them. So that's where I find expression of my identity here.
I think to add to that, Jules, we have to reclaim social media somehow. It's a mode of technology, just like the telephone and the telegraph and other forms of even writing letters, where you can be somewhere but not be there. But it's been very commodified.
Robbie says in the text, "The only time I am is real. The only time I am the real me is when I don't have to mask. I think it is also about accepting not everyone will like me."
I really love what this man said, and made me think of something. Sometimes, if suddenly I'm introducing two people, but they're from two different environments, I get super overwhelmed. And maybe it is because if one was from a professional setting and the other was from a personal setting, it's like the masks are colliding and I'm tongue tied and awkward, and people are like, what the heck is going on with you? Or at least I imagine they are.
Wasn't there a hit record once? Who Can I Be Now? Is it that Australian band? I can't remember.
Work.
Text please, I didn't hear that.
Men at Work, the people who did Down Under.
Yeah, I thought that Down Under was getting that vibe.
That was more about paranoia. Who can it be now? And I only know that's because I've listened to that song quite a lot. Getting back to the topic of the post, about versions of self and asking who's the real me. I mean, this connected with myself quite a lot, because it's sometimes a question to ask. Maybe this is the time of year I do it actually. It's like self-reflection because it's coming to the end of the year and beginning of a new one. And it's things that we kind of touched on before, is the masking thing, or performance, gameplay, whatever you want to call it, depending on the environment you're in and the people you're talking to. I act completely different to being here, to when I'm with my family, to when I'm with certain friends. Even different friends I'm with is always a slightly different way of talking and behaving, etc. Sometimes I'm more relaxed, sometimes a bit more kind of stringent, and strict and things. Just what you're saying, especially around family. Especially my parents, I would probably say. But even here, the way I speak on here is slower and more clearer than it would be if I was speaking in normal conversation. Because in my head, while I'm speaking, while I'm performing, for the podcast, as well as being understood by other people, especially other people with different accents as well, is to make sure I'm clear enough and it's slowed down. And then that's like, well, that's not real me. But then again, it is real me because it's me that's doing it, and I'm doing it because I choose to do it, and I choose to do other things that I do. The performance, the masking, whatever you want to call it, camouflaging, as was said in the post, it's by choice, and the choice is done by the reasoning of why I would do it in certain environments, to keep myself safe and to keep things comfortable for everyone else as well.
That's a very good point. I just will say one thing quickly though. Back to the meaning of the song and paranoia. I feel like if you got really meta about the versions of yourself or the masks, or for good or for bad, or masks you were forced into somehow for a profession or your parents or something, it could lead to paranoia.
Yeah, I was going to say the idea of a consistent self may be a myth. Self is very adaptable and is formed by, you know, circumstances. I mean, even here, as I was listening to Harry there, even here in this environment, the theme of a discussion perhaps, or the subjects that are brought up, can sometimes change how I might act or might express myself. It's like I almost have to get into the mindset of it. So I'm reacting to what I'm hearing and what people are saying. We all do this, I think. And so the self is very fluid. And to your point, Teresa, to be meta about it, that is it. You know, whatever filter you use to express yourself, it'll be an expression. And that's quite fluid. It's not predictable, it's not static.
That said, though, when you're alone and by yourself has been brought up, and that has changed for me since I learned that I am autistic. I am going back to the me before I was 6 years old when I'm alone. I'm not going to be someone else. I just want to appreciate my unmasked self, who I just feel I'm being reintroduced to.
I would just say to that that the interpretation we have of our past selves is from the self we have now, which is very structured. I'll leave it at that.
What Robbie's added in the text is, I avoid places where I'm expected to mask. And Robbie's kind of mentioned this many times before, as if he has to mask, has to change who he is, he feels it's not worth the effort to be in that environment. And that's me taken from the text that's been shared, and also discussion and experiences that Robbie shared in the past. The next post is from NDY's Hub, who's a business consultant, AUDHD advocate, parent, article writer and resource creator focused on safety, communication and agency in ways that honour neurodivergent experiences, based in the UK. And they've shared the following. I've just finished reading Emma's book, But We Are a Little Autistic. I've just finished reading the book, But We're a Little Bit Autistic, Aren't We? A book by Emma Delmain. Emma writes from lived experience and that grounding matters. Her voice is open and honest, offering practical guidance without being prescriptive or pushy. She wears her heart on her sleeve and it shows. The book is personal, vulnerable, and deeply relatable. It's also accessible, easy to follow, clear and written in a way that supports understanding rather than overwhelm. What stood out most was the call to action woven throughout. There's a clear reminder that lived experience must be listened to, and that we have a responsibility to protect and advocate for those who cannot yet do so themselves. Autistic children grow into autistic adults, and how we show up for them now matters. What's your thoughts?
Is
Sounds
this
promising.
is this about authenticity? It reminds me what Robbie was saying about listening to the experiences of the autistic person.
I especially like the call to action. I was worried when there was a call to action, the call to action of how to be advocates and listen to young autistic people. If you find one in your life, I think we are the best people to listen to them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, yeah, I totally agree. There's there's a lot of talk about, and rightly so, about learning from others with experience in terms of people that are older, and how experience that way can be shared and it can provide valuable information, great stories, and a sense of, linking up with people. And the reverse is the same in terms of age, that younger people, younger autistic people, can talk about their experiences of them growing up and how things have maybe progressed or been a little bit different. And then it can be a sort of link in between the two. Because we can all learn from each other, not just about autism, but, basically a lot of things, everything, if we want to kind of make it universal. So it's nice that things like this can come together and basically demonstrate that there's always something new to learn, and there's always something new progressively to learn. And as Robbie says in the text, they need to listen to those with lived experience. And that needs to be repeated time and time again.
There is a difficulty there, though, isn't there? Because if we're looking for the people that are understanding their autism from a neurodivergent perspective, they're the adults. They're the people who have possibly the younger generation have experienced the concepts, and now they're adults. How do they then speak backwards? Most generations are separated into silos. How does somebody who is an autistic elder have relevance for the younger generation? If we're to protect this younger generation, how do we do it?
I would layer on to that not just the silos of the age groups, which I suppose we could learn about somehow, how they there are silos that are identified, and I'm not sure why, millennials and whatever, but also their cultural experiences. So, in different places, I feel they may be experiencing it differently, if that makes any sense. So, the culture or the place that they're in, too, could be layered on.
Yeah, there's people in the text saying about meeting him halfway. We were all children once, have a common tongue. There does appear to be, by many people, autistic people included, the generation sort of competition where one generation has suffered more, so has more standing to the ones that apparently have had it more easier. That seems to be a lot in conversation, but a lot in social media, which does become a poisoned kind of chalice in many ways, for competition and rage bait and all that. So it's breaking through that, and conversations won't always be easy, but it certainly can be done, because certainly in my position, being middle-aged, it'd be great to learn from younger people in comparison to what their experience is as being, for instance, autistic children and adolescents in comparison to mine. I was an adolescent, 25, 26 years ago, so I think it's only 28. So it's such a long gap, so it's just, because the thing you definitely want to feel, or I definitely want to feel, is that progress is being made. Sometimes there's not progress being made, it's just things are happening in a different way, but not always in a good way. Especially with technology and advancements that we've had, doesn't mean things are always good, but there's certainly potential for things to be progressive.
I think I saw it in action at Christmas when the room got overwhelming, and my daughter gently said to the room, or to her brother who happened to be near the lamp, "There's a lot of sensory input in here right now. Do you think you could turn that lamp off?" It sounds simple, but I don't feel like somebody in my generation would have said that.
Yeah, it's like exposure saying that.
I would have been 23 years ago now when we moved from one office to a renovated building, and the lights were just too much. And this is 12 or 13 years before my diagnosis. And I did have the tubes taken out above my desk. And then in another job a few years later, I had the light tube taken out above my desk.
I was in a workplace where, because it was the department in a newspaper where we were, building the internet version of the newspaper, there were a lot of neurodivergent people, and I don't think we knew it about ourselves or people necessarily knew it, but I feel like it was highly tolerated because the employers knew they had to keep us. And a man sitting next to me kept on putting in these requisition orders to get the fluorescent bulb above his desk taken out, but it never would happen. And so one day, like a hero, like a Norma Ray, he stood on his desk and took it out, like you, GR. And then there was another guy like that who sat near this, I think the northwest corner of the open space. And he sent an email to all, because back then you didn't know you shouldn't send it to the entire company, about how every day at approximately 3:31, which is a correct way of saying it because tomorrow it will be a different time, the sun pierced him in the eye. And I have never forgotten that.
The next post is from Embrace Autism, who are a mental health service, science website, diagnostics centre, research-based information, empowerment by autistics for autistics. Embrace your advantages. And what they've shared is the following, and they've linked in an article that they've shared. You might have seen terms like neurotypical and neurodivergent in autism literature. If not, you certainly will on this website. But what do these terms mean? And the article they've shared is written by Martin Silverton, which is talking about neurotypical and neurodivergent, which was originally published August 13th, 2018 and updated in March 2023. And it's quite short, so I'll go through it. You might have seen terms like neurotypical and neurodivergent in the autism literature. If not, you certainly will on this website. But what do these terms mean? Neurovariance. To distinguish between autistic people, typically developing people, and non-autistic people with atypical brain wiring, all which fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity, the following terms are used. Neurotypical, which means neurologically typical, i.e. without a defined neurological difference, which was originally used to refer to everyone non-autistic. The term has now narrowed to refer to people with typical neurology and development. Allistic, also referred to as nypical. The term refers to all non-autistic people, which comprises both neurotypicals and non-autistic neurodivergent people. This is what originally referred to as neurotypical. Neurodivergent, which is an umbrella term that includes people with diverse mental and behavioural differences and disorders. The term refers to individuals with mood disorders, anxiety disorders, dissociative disorders, psychotic disorders, personality disorders, neurodevelopmental disorders, and eating disorders. Do know that the term disorder is very questionable in some cases. In the hierarchy, and it shows an Euler diagram as well. And it says, have a look at the Euler diagram below for a visualization of what these terms Have a look at the Euler diagram below for a visualization of what these terms encompass and with which terms they overlap. And it goes through the typical neurology, non-autistic, neurodiversity and atypical neurology. Also note that neurodiversity refers to a larger group of people, and so a single individual cannot be neurodiverse. Rather, they would be called neurodivergent, as you can see in the diagram. The use of terms. A lot of people, admittedly myself included in the past, have been using the term neurotypical incorrectly to refer to non-autistics. But it's probably better to make a distinction between those without autism and those without any neurodiversions to speak of. If we're discussing people who are not autistic but may or may not be neurodivergent, including, for example, people with ADHD, then the correct term to use is allistic or nypical. In context, particularly in scientific studies, it can be beneficial to have a pure control group, where autistic people can be compared with people that have been verified not to have any type of neurodivergence. In this case, you would have a neurotypical control group. On the other hand, you may want an impure control group if you want to compare autism with the general population, in which the control group would have to be a large, selectly randomised sample. In this case, you would have an allistic control group. In many research papers, you will find the term typically developing, TD. Disclaimer. In our posts, we will refrain from using allistic and nypical, as these terms have not reached sufficient popularity for efficient use. We feel it would become obtrusive to explain the terms in each post in which they are used. But we will use neurotypical and non-autistic when appropriate, and may at times use the term neurodivergent. It may occur at times, however, that we will use the term non-autistic where technically neurotypical is meant, as not all the research on which we base on our posts use the terms in their appropriate context, and we cannot always verify which of the terms the researchers intended. Although less likely, it may also happen that we ourselves use the terms interchangeably at times. Sorry about that. I know it was quite a lengthy read in the end, but the point was about the terminology and the understanding of it. What's people's thoughts?
Well, there's no thoughts because everyone's fallen asleep and fucked off. You know? What is this crap? Are they telling us that we can't use language? No. What they're telling us is in a very specific set of circumstances, people need to be really, really precise on their language, in scientific papers, etc. But if this is coming out into the normal world, where somebody is going to criticise me for saying neurodiverse, neurodivergent, or any of the other versions, then that's not okay. So go back and put this post back in whatever journal it needs to go in, and let the rest of us use language in a dynamic and open way.
I was going to say their last sentence should have been its own paragraph. The one that said, sorry about that.
What it appears to be, when I was sharing it and reading through it, was it was thinking about language and terminology too much. It was getting in too deep. And what the meaning of it is.
I feel as though it would change the very next day, or the moment you posted, it would be obsolete, like some sort of manual or bureaucratic thing. It is not, it is overwhelming.
To be clear here, why this was shared and why it's been discussed is because it's overthinking of terminology which may confuse people, and even the people sharing it may be confused themselves. But language is relative. It depends who's saying it. Because some people are offended by autism and autistic in either way that you say it. So it's one point and one issue, or one of many issues.
The only problem I have a lot of language, like when I say autism, is people stop listening and start making assumptions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Once we get into too much of this, it's assumptions that begin to get made, or people make assumptions anyway, as you've already explained many times, Robbie, that when you say autism, assumptions are made and misunderstandings, or maybe it's not even misunderstanding, it's just that they use it to weaponise what you've told them, which has been shared in many other posts as well.
It's because I put crappy academic study before real experience. And they've been always junk out in the media for years, weaponising being autistic. I know what autistic means to me because I've lived it. And yet I'm having people treating me as I have a learning difficulty because there's always crap out that all autistic people have a learning disability. All people need to do is actually listen. Simple as that. Wait for me to explain what autism means instead of jumping to conclusions from crappy studies done by male white neurotypicals.
The next post is from the attack. The next post is from the Actually Autistic Coach, who's a personal coach. I empower my fellow autistic people by working to uncover and unmask, revealing our best selves. And they've shared the following. Autistic futurism isn't about including us in the future. It's about imagining futures that only make sense because autistic people are in them. Different rhythms, different values, different ways of knowing. Not cured, not managed, not normalised. Alive. Truly alive. On our terms. What's people's thoughts?
A lot of the posts here, Harry, seem to be relating to identity.
Or identifying.
Why does he mention futurism? Oh, yeah, he does sort of explain what he means by futurism, including us in the future. It's a loaded term.
It can only be, this list can only include the person who wrote the list. And the list before was made by a bureaucracy.
The problem is to be included, we actually have to be included in decisions. What representation do we actually have in government that make all decisions?
Well, we might in the future, so don't give up hope. The first thing we would do is burn all of these terms.
I
If
think
I'm being fair, I
actually,
can see. Oh, carry on, Jules.
I'm happy to give way to you, Ray.
I was going to say, if I'm being fair, people who post like this are actually attempting something. They're trying to do something for themselves, and they want to include us in it. Their use of the word us is maybe, a bit careless. But anyway, everything there, you can kind of identify with a lot of the words. But I think this is like a reaching out. This is like a, here I am, I'm saying this, respond. If you see what I mean.
There's a Labour MP called Kat Eccles who has autism and stood up for Autism Awareness Week. So that's another one we can pencil in for an interview.
Jules?
Good thinking.
It's okay, I'll pass.
Teresa, sorry.
This second one, I think Ray's right. He's putting his list together more to start a conversation, and maybe I was harsh just because I was looking at it after the overwhelming one before it.
Yeah, I don't think this person's actually a professional coach employed in that sense. They haven't indicated that or stated that. I think it's, when we mask, we mask. We take on roles. And, one of them, if you're going to be an activist or advocate in the paradigm, the neurodivergent paradigm, you sort of like maybe want to be a coach.
I find the whole thing confusing, okay? I can't imagine a future that doesn't have autistic people in it. Because autistic people, for me, have historically been an intrinsic part of the way society works. Autistic people have been the thread throughout humans' development. Without us, we don't have enough diversity in society to have progress in society. We need a wide group of people for progress to happen, for choices to be made from a wide selection of things. And you need neurodivergent people in that whole mix. Equally, I would say that perhaps the proportion of neurodiverse people to whatever the term is that we've just learnt, neurotypical or the other people, I can't use a word now because I've been medicalised in my language. We need them too. That's how society historically has been created. What's happening now is that there's an understanding that there are these classifications or different types of human beings that are closer to races than we've ever had races. Black skins and culture and different stances and bone structures and facial types aren't as much differences really as autism from the rest of the population.
Don't you feel these identities already look dated? I've got this feeling that we've been through a decade of identity politics, and it's on the wane now.
Hopefully we get a kind of inclusivity, but we might not. I think what this guy is sort of unconsciously fearing is maybe a process of normalisation where that's maybe the explanation for how he feels that autism might not exist in the future.
Oh, I actually read his list a little differently. If you put little diagrams with it, it's sort of like that list where somebody's becoming a man from I don't know what, um, like a Neanderthal or whatever. But this one looks like freedom's at the end on our own terms. So I think it's more positive than we thought. Maybe I overreacted when I first saw it. So I don't know.
I think he's kicking back against this inclusion idea that's going around in white saviour worlds. They've changed tolerance to inclusion. It's still basically the same attitudes with a little bit of a shove in a slightly different direction emotionally. I think maybe he or they are pointing out that the current inclusion is not enough. What needs to be is a full integration and equality. But my understanding of history is that the autistic characters have either been unequal by being emperors and kings and captains of industry on one end, or by being in the other end amongst the most underprivileged groups. It feels to me as though human beings are not that changeable in their basic nature and need for structure of society as we go forward.
I think
Briefly, I
basically,
Go on, Robbie.
I think basically all these things happen in law, but not actually in practice, because there's plenty of laws that are saying about inclusion, but they're not properly practiced. The Care Act is about supporting me in to live the life that I want, but it doesn't happen in practice.
Yeah, I don't think the current concept of inclusion is actually inclusion. Or to be more accurate, inclusive.
The
I
whole
like
basic.
I like the different ways of knowing. This list, the person who wrote it possibly thinks is futurism, but I'm looking at it as something that happened in um, places in the world at a point in time in history when people were not fussed. They just knew instinctively that a person was this way and made room for them.
I would think a lot is probably developed with the development of capitalism, where a person's value was decided on how much use they were to the privileged.
Yeah, but when it was this more ancient kind of society, not long before that, where somebody, I've said this weird thing before, but you can imagine they might have been a shepherd or uh, a seer or a wise man or woman, a witch, who knows, but they would have had a place.
The next post. is from Blue Sky Learning, who are a mental health service. We support neurodivergent individuals globally with coaching, counselling and consulting services based in Canada. And they've shared the following. Something called medical overshadowing. And they've shared a presentation, but I'll read the supporting text. Medical overshadowing is often misunderstood, especially for neurodivergent individuals, people with chronic illness, or marginalised patients navigating healthcare systems. Common ways medical overshadowing shows up include physical symptoms repeatedly explained away as just anxiety or just stress, new or worsening symptoms minimised or ignored, feeling unheard, dismissed or belittled during appointments. Recommendations focus solely on mental health without addressing the symptom itself. Providers relying on assumptions about neurodivergence, chronic illness or gender. Delayed diagnosis or treatment due to bias or misunderstanding. Increased anxiety, frustration or self-doubt about your body's signals. And reduced trust in healthcare providers or the medical system. These experiences aren't a reflection of exaggeration, weakness or poor communication. They reflect systematic bias, gaps in provider training and misunderstanding of neurodivergent or chronically ill bodies. At Blue Sky Learning, our neurodiversity affirming therapists and coaches help you recognise medical overshadowing, validate your experiences and develop strategies to advocate for thorough, personalised care. Together we can shift from the maybe I'm overacting to I deserve to be seen, heard and cared for. It talks about this free 20-minute consultation and other issues and other services below. What's people's thoughts on what they've shared?
Well, I don't mean to be pessimistic again, but I do live in Canada, where we do have public health care, but this organization will not be included because there's a 20-minute free consultation or whatever it said. My question would be, would they come with you to all of the other appointments? No, I don't think so. So all of this might be true, but it's just a hook to get you to come to their counseling. I'm sorry if I'm being completely negative, but it really does feel like that, and it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, I understand that thought, and that's exactly what it is doing, in my opinion as well. But what it's also doing is raising issue and providing information in instances that we've talked about before.
The list might be good. The list they've given might be good, like to keep in mind, though.
Yeah, what the list is doing is, in my mind, it's providing examples of how people are treated. Because I know what it's like to be treated as neurodivergent in, the National Health Service, in the UK and Scotland. And feeling that you may not be taken as seriously as you should be. And not just that, but feeling the lacking confidence of the communication to actually give to a doctor, a GP, who can only see you for 10 to 15 minutes and feeling under pressure to script things and write things down to make sure that the right process is made and the right care is administered. And that's just thinking of self. And I've been in many situations where I felt there was something wrong and I felt it could be serious. And even though it turns out not to be as bad as it was, it's just that sort of apprehension of having to explain how I feel, because only you can, and I mean they can only go by what you tell them in the first instance anyway, and I've always found that difficult, especially when it's something that seems a bit irregular or something that you try to understand in terms of. Sometimes, I mean, there was about 10 years ago I was very stressed out, but I couldn't understand why I was feeling what I was feeling, and trying to find a way to explain the symptoms, you know, medically, how it felt physically, how it felt mentally. It was just such a rehearsal. And when you're stressed out already and you're feeling ill already, it just doesn't feel helpful. I know the world isn't a simple place, but that's how it relates to me.
I really hear that, Harry. And I understand why all of these different posts that you've shared today have relevance to what we're doing here. I also agree with what Teresa's saying, and I feel cynical like her. This is a huge medical company that has a lot of staff. They have a program, and their program is to make their staff neuroaffirming. So it's a corporate structure, and they're using all of this wonderful wording that we are now ironically piggybacking on to bring up your feelings and such like. They have got that as part of their slick selling machine right up front. None of us know the reality behind this, and none of us have really defined what neuroaffirming therapy is. What we know is that this is a company that pays its executives well and its therapists well, and we are the people who pay for it.
You know, it would be great if the training and learning they provided was given to the people, the healthcare professionals, or the government, um, people who make decisions about um, care, which is similar in Canada to the UK. You see, because I guess that's a marketing thing to put that list together and to say all these things that are true, and we read them and we identify with them, and they think, yeah. But I don't think I want to go and be paying for them to teach me how to deal with this. I think it would be much more powerful if the organizations paid to put the providers through this training.
The only useful support I've had mental health wise is when I paid for it. Everything else I've had for the mental health service has been crap, harmful, and really damaged me. So I'm happy to pay for support, because when it comes down to it, whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And anything I've had on the NHS has been crap.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. But but maybe this is like a pipe dream or something. But I'm thinking, if we want a difference in the things that are really frustrating and challenging, what if they were training the people who are meant to be helping us?
Nothing government wide is any good, because all they're interested in is pushing people into work. I've lived with the mental health service goings on and autism all my life. I've been involved with the mental health service since 11. to have one goal, make you compliant and push you into work. Very much the same goal as the schools have. And the only useful help has been I've had to pay for it.
Well, thanks everyone. That was a good discussion tonight. And thanks for people who have posted. And thanks for people who have shared these posts that have created discussion for tonight also. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 28th of December 2025, which is part of the Spectrum Voices conversation, which normally is every Sunday 5:55pm to 7pm UK time. But we're also doing it as part of Autistic Radio Days. So thank you once again, and I'll hand over to Jules.
Yes, that's right, Harry. We're here all of the 4 radio days. So there's 2 more of these programmes for the 29th and 30th. Harry is here every Sunday, and the Facebook page is autisticradio.com. There's something to remind us all about at this time of year, and that's the backstage area that we have here at Autistic Radio. It's a tough time for many of us, and having a place to reach out to and be your neurodivergent self is a good thing to have, even if it's a backstop for you. autisticradio.com/backstage will lead you to 4-hour sessions over the next couple of days, and we'd welcome you should you want to hang out with us or text with us or speak with us. Stay safe.